Might be live. Let's see here. See if we can't get link to the stream up and out. Seems like we are live. Gonna get pulled up on my phone so I can see chat while we are rolling through here. Waiting on deck lists at the moment, and maybe this time I will remember to turn off the waiting on decks reminder text before we jump into reviewing decks. Just checking GP archive, just want to make sure things are formatted properly. So this should reveal, yeah, this should be perfectly sized. And then if I close this, okay, cool. Everything is visible cleanly on that. Let's head back to our current GP. Currently open for submissions. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 competitors. We might get a 16th. Someone really sneaks in a deck list there before we go live in just a few moments. Eager to see how things shape up. Just waiting for folks to get in here and waiting for pairings to get posted. Looks like Cool Beans is going to try and hustle in here last minute. I know that turnout's going to be a little lower here just by virtue of Worlds occurring at the same time. If we pop on over to the Worlds bracket, like there's already one match down. Philippe Sander taking it 2-1 on a pretty tight matchup. So we got Philippe Sander on the Amp It Up Jeskai deck versus Drake on Jund Groudon ramp. Both pretty solid decks. From what I heard, it was actually a pretty close match, but Philippe was able to move on to be our first player continuing on in the upper bracket, so that's exciting for Philippe. No deck lists yet. Waiting on the news. It sounds like we did get a 16th. Yeah, Cool Beans got in here. So we got a 16-player GP. Not too shabby. We've had smaller GPs. Yeah, like June 2024 had that many players, and that was not an end of season tournament. To be fair, if I had been more pulled together at that point in time in my life, I probably would have been a 17th in that tournament. But unfortunately, I was just not in a place to participate in GP Techian, and then I missed out on a lot of the Cyberus season as a result. But happy I was able to dive in and really get into the format in its full extent and really just sink my teeth into the format with everything it had to offer for me in the Cliques and Island season, and there's been no looking back. I've had some off periods. I sat out on uh GP Bastion d'Orlais and GP Scophos, but been a strong start to the year. I've participated in every GP so far this year. Trying to get those numbers up, trying to get my participation rate up, because can't get a top 8, can't get a win on a GP if you don't participate. And hey, winning doesn't get you qualifier. Winning alone isn't how you qualify for Worlds, because especially in the later seasons, in the later tournaments, getting second place or even third or fourth, if the other people who are making those numbers are people who've qualified for Worlds already, that locks you in for a slot for Worlds as well. So can't get that without participating, and gonna see if I can't get more participation to try and earn my way to Worlds 2026 maybe. Just waiting on Scribble to post pairings, and then once pairings are posted, we will be able to jump into breaking down the deck lists. I will say up front, I'm very nervous about my deck in particular, because it is not one that is even remotely tested, and I made a bunch of panic changes to it about an hour and a half ago. It is pure deck theory, and there are some things that I changed that maybe I should have made further adjustments on, but the basic meme of the idea was just too tantalizing to ignore. The only like massive change that I think maybe I should have spent more time being considerate of was taking my planar deck from 10 to 15. I just think I'm in a position where, I'm not playing a breakneck aggro deck, and I'm not playing a deck that has a ton of life gain and sustain. So I really need to minimize the number of planes my opponent can roll into that will kill me rapidly. Not to say I'm on a control deck, though. We'll get into what I'm in when we get to my deck in the breakdown. See Panders typing in GP Halls of Valor chat. Aggro's not real if you don't match into it. I mean, that's Stasis' experience with Worlds in a nutshell. Stasis brought a deck that they said is favored into aggro, and aggro's on the other side of the Worlds bracket. So, aggro's not real for Stasis. I feel so bad for them, because they've been so eager to get some real solid results for Builder, and then they run into hard control right out the gate. I feel like there's going to be a moment that arrives when I go up and I'm like, I'm going to get some more water. And the moment I get up from my desk is when pairings get posted. I can see it now. I can see it in the cards. The fates hold it for me. So we have Chip, Magma, Crush, PTM, Cajun, then I locked 6th. And I made minor changes, but I'm still on the same basic archetype I locked originally. Then Volt Switch, Epid, Viola, who I see in chat, hi, hello, Red Panders, who I know has expressed they're going to be joining in and checking out the stream soon, as well as Silver, Tomas, Kilgaris, All Who Wander, Philippe Center. Hey, speaking of Panders, hi, Philippe and Cool Beans. And it's cool that we get people who are in Worlds on this lineup. That's a pretty fun, special little thing for us to enjoy, because I believe I'm closing my chat real quick because I want to just pull up the Worlds bracket on my phone. So Philippe is in both tournaments. Drake is not. Ricky is not. Cool Beans just locked for both tournaments. Platy is only in Worlds. Laurel is only in Worlds. Provocative is only in Worlds. Itai only in Worlds. H Squid only in Worlds. All Who Wander is in both tournaments. Zangi only in Worlds. Stasis only in Worlds. Li is only in Worlds. Caillou only in Worlds. And then PTM is in both tournaments, and Split is only in Worlds. I see a ping on Discord. Is it? It's pairings! Hey! We have pairings, which means if I refresh my browser, yeah, now let me remember to take off the stream text. You got Kilgaris to play your never tested deck. You feel accomplished? Well, I have good news for you. I'm also on a never tested deck. That's going to be kind of funky, but it's doing some kind of potentially very rude things. So we'll see how it is. Oh no, you have the mirror, and I'm up against Cajun. So our matchups are Tomas into Viola, Panders into Kilgaris, Silver Parabellum into Cold Beans, Epid into All Who Wander, myself into Cajun, Dr. Chipmunk into Philippe Sanner, Crush Castles 23 into Volt Switch 70, Magma Dragon 3 into PTM. 8 matches in round 1. Let's break down the decks. Oh, that's nice. It's got the separated planar deck here. It's gonna make things easy. So let's take a count. I'm just gonna scroll through real quick. We've got 15, 15, 10, 10, 15. I know I'm on 15. 10 for Volt Switch. Epid is on 15. So that's, I believe, 5 to 3, 15 to 10. 15 for Viola, 15 for Panders, Mono Black Aggro. Oh, you monster. Silver's on 15. Tomas is on 11. Interesting. And Kilgaris is on 15. All Who Wander. What on earth is happening here? What on earth is happening here? What is happening here? I feel like something happened with All Who Wander's deck. Irradiated Amalgam Eradicator Engine. And then there's 14 Irradiated Amalgams. 19 of all these harmonies. All right. 10 planar cards for Philippe, and then Cool Beans is on 15. And I feel no, that is every deck besides All Who Wander. We have 10 decks on 15, 4 on 10, and then Tomas stands alone on 11 plain cards. Looks like they're doing a deck check on All Who Wander here in GP Halls of Valor chat. Let's start breaking it down. Chip is on Mr. Smith's Lightspeed Odyssey. This is a deck I kind of saw coming. This is the Savvy Smith Covetous Frostworm deck trying to leverage Den of the First Dream, as well as specifically leveraging Karsi's Spine with Covetous Frostworm, and then Den of the First Dreams with a bunch of solid 1-mana spells. Actually, does this deck use Den very well? I get so it lets you flashback Ebb and Flow, flashback Punishment from Nyx, flashback Light Vein, flashback High Voltage. Industrialize and Igneous Visions already have it, so it lets you flashback Firebolt for 1 instead of 5, which is nice. It lets you flashback Terminal Impact, which is pretty brutal. Igneous Visions, oh, they're doing 1 promo of each of these, sure. Research Grant is particularly spicy, and the Lightspeed Launcher. I like the Research Grant inclusion. This was a fun one. I think that's a very smart include, specifically with Savvy Smith and Covetous Frostworm. And I think there is something to say for this kind of core. Maybe Frostworm struggling just a little bit once you can no longer get it into play for 1 mana, as the designer intended it. But I do think there's something to be said for Savvy Smith with Research Grant moving forward. And it's interesting to see. It'll be very interesting to see how 2 new sets coming in May can help bolster the Savvy Smith Research Grant core, because I think Savvy Smith, one of the things that I felt a lot with that is that Savvy Smith really wanted something that cared more intrinsically about its particular abilities. And Lightspeed Launcher, while it is very good, Savvy Smith doesn't care about it all that much. But what Savvy Smith does care about is, or rather, Savvy Smith still doesn't care about Research Grant, but Research Grant benefits more off of the draw from Savvy Smith. So there's more internal synergies here. You get to do the draw 2 more cards, cast 2 or more spells to flip the Research Grant, and then you can play this like flashback graveyard value deck with Igneous Visions, with Industrialize, with Firebolt, and Research Grant can copy those spells out of your graveyard to get you some more value. So I think there is some fun things to like there. Yeah, this main seems pretty sweet. Land base, Chip always making it a little hard to parse their mana base with all of these different unique art lands, but let them live their dream. 4 Temple of Origins, 4 Primal Fissure, 2 Cityscape, 2 Nimbus of Thought. I feel like one of the things I felt with this deck is that you really want as few tap lands as possible, and Nimbus plus Cityscape is really the maximum hard tapped lands I think you're safe running is 4. And then Primal Fissure, Temple of Origins, they're untapped in the early turns when you need them to be, and then later on they can be tapped, which can be awkward, but you can just filter them away to Savvy Smith or Industrialize if as need be. Sideboard is 1 Android Stunner, which is kind of funky. 1 Punishment from Nyx to go with the one in main, another Light Vein Arrow to go with the one in main, a full playset of Turn to Nyx, glad to see this is being adopted, full playset of Invasion's End is particularly funky, 2 A God Divided, and 2 Soul Guide Lantern. Planar deck for Chipmunk is 4th Street. This does not surprise me. Den of the First Stream does not surprise me. Prismatic Pool is unsurprising. The Veilgate is unsurprising. Jericho's Abandoned Office also pretty unsurprising here. Actually, how does Abandoned Office synergize intrinsically with the deck? I know obviously cast second spell, Investigate, but I feel like this deck is very mana hungry. There's not really many ways to leverage the artifact. So I feel like it could be possible that Jericho's Abandoned Office is just trying to develop the resource in case you do have excess mana to spend. And then otherwise, you're just rolling to try and turn those clues into 4/4s to try and kill your opponent. Before the Chasmal Rift, very clever include with all of these flashback synergies. Kaiwan's Testing Grounds, pretty obvious. Sanjara Raceway, pretty obvious. Tower of the Tech Magi is just nutty. Karthi's Spine, for obvious reasons, remains of Morig Moore. Similar case as with Jericho's Abandoned Office. I almost wonder if these are just like here to kind of mitigate and like fill the gaps for trying to get to the full 15. And I almost wonder if these want to be the white, blue, and black pledge planes. So that way you can specifically try and hone in on the Tyrell click, so you get that Surveil 2 going. I feel like that might be more beneficial. Courier Station is pretty easy. Selena's Private Collection is pretty easy. Golden Palace, pretty easy. Eltenzia's Toll, pretty easy as well. So, pretty sweet planar deck. I can't help but wonder if maybe the Morig Moore and the Jericho's Abandoned Office could be better used as some of the Nylon cliques, but just sort of speculation on that front. Moving on to Magma Dragon, Swablu gets a promotion. Whitecliff Pilgrim, Gloomy Meteorologist, Stratus Fledgling, and Host of the Never-Ending Revel. Interesting to see Magma. I know they've been really hard on the blue-white, Primordial Seas weather deck. It's nice to see Magma trying to branch out into Esper. Very interesting strategy here. Gloomy Meteorologist obviously just kills with Primordial Seas combo, if you can get this in play for the Primordial Seas combo. And of course, Stratus Fledgling, just amazing at getting Primordial Seas down quickly. You get one Fledgling down, you get Rain Dance, and then you can cast Rain Dance for 3, attack with Fledgling, go get like Sea Breeze, and you can like Sea Breeze for 1 to bounce an opposing creature. Then the following turn you can swing again, get the Primordial Seas, or you can get Primordial Seas off the first one, Primordial Seas off the second. And then you have Weathers cost 2 less with... so these both cost 5. You cast one for 5 and then cast another one for 5. It's a little clunky, but it's cool. It's a very cool combo if left unchecked. 4x Walk the Dead's Path in main is really spicy. One of the things that I think is just true of these weather decks is because you're capitalizing on your sideboard slots by dedicating them to weathers. We have 6 weathers in the sideboard here, so really only 9 sideboard slots to be dedicated to real sideboard cards. Worthwhile to just try and include some more techie cards in the main. Walk the Dead's Path is a big one, but it is pretty universal in the format right now. Really appreciate Gloomy Meteorologist Lifelink. There will be a number of games where you want it to run it as a 3/3 lifelinker. I also fully agree on that. Meteorologist just being a 3/3 lifelinker is pretty huge, especially with how potent some of the aggressive planes are at pushing damage. I think Meteorologist just being a lifelinker on its own is pretty great. And Host of the Neverending Revel, if this didn't like keep you off of sacrificing non-token permanents, I would be really excited about it in this field, but that ward cost I think is a lot easier to pay in this field than it would be normally because of how many planes can just generate trinket tokens, because it doesn't care about sacrificing a non-token permanent to its ward cost, only to its main trigger. So its main trigger is still going to be pretty debilitating on enter and attack, but its ward cost is going to be pretty easily mitigated in this current environment. But the 4 Walk the Dead's Path, 4 Tyranny of Tracks, 4 Seafloor Treasures, 4 Omen of Slaughter, 3 Omen of Deception, got a 4/4/5 on 1 extra Swamp over the other basics, as well as Nascent Light Veins, Cityscapes, and Tyrrell Districts. Not a Primal Fisher to speak of. And then, of course, we have the 6 weathers in the sideboard, the 1 Falling Ashes, the 2 Sea Breeze, the 1 Rain Dance, and the 2 Primordial Seas. Always a little awkward to have an off-color weather compared to your others, because, you probably do want to get some value out of Rain Dance as soon as you can, but Rain Dance gets killed if you have to go grab Falling Ashes. Surprisingly control heavy, but that's kind of how you try to get 7 mana for C. Yeah, and it helps that Stratus Fledgling can make your Primordial Seas cost 6 or 5 or 4 mana as you get multiple copies, or especially as you get to start Rain Dancing one. That can do wonders to help Primordial Seas be more accessible. Especially if you can do Stratus Fledgling, copy it with Rain Dance. Your Fledgling that you gets you Primordial Seas, and then you just Primordial Seas the Rain Dance, or Primordial Seas one of your lands. Just try and get yourself to make the second Primordial Seas happen sooner. And then, of course, 2 Primordial Seas just makes infinite Primordial Seas and makes infinite of all of your permanents. And if you got Rain Dance plus Primordial Seas in play, you just make infinite of Rain Dances and then attack with one of your creatures and make infinite of those creatures, which is pretty fun. And then otherwise, a bunch of black cards in the sideboard. 2 Lurking Vircolocus, 3 Singularity. I don't like 3 Singularity. I feel like if you want it, you want the play set. But this is at least nice for just picking off any creature or enchantment that's mana value 0 or 1. And then, as the game goes on, if you can find extra copies, it gets a little bit better. It's just such an awkward, clunky card. And then full 4 Earthly Penchants is just so rude. Magma is on a 15 plain card deck. Beauclair Manor is curious. Good with the omens. Less good with some of the other things the deck is doing. I guess you could sacrifice Falling Ashes, which is not too shabby. Castle Stelia seems pretty nice. Just slow down the game, generate some treasures, force your opponent to want to try and leave. Coyer Station is pretty good. You got the 14 instance plus 7 flash enchantments, so 19 cards in your deck that you can play off of to disturb the piece on your opponent's turn with Coyer Station. Then, of course, you've got a flyer here, which can try and slip through to deal more damage over the top to try and get you to disturb the piece on your turn. Fragile Haven. I'm not very fond of Fragile Haven. It's particularly the end step trigger that makes it really awkward, because there is this competing idea of, if you are ever rolling the planar dice, you are conceding that the best case scenario for that planar dice roll is you don't get the Nomad token. So there's just like a give and take with Fragile Haven that I think makes it a more interesting card for like casual play, but if you're trying to just include it in your deck for competitive sake, I think it is really awkward. Greenglade Campsite does not have that issue. It actively incentivizes you to roll, so your opponent doesn't get the benefit next. Kinda City Market is interesting. There's not a lot of this that can spend a lot of mana on for Kinda City Market. Like, this really struck me as a ramp tool, so very interesting to see Kinda City Market here. I guess, you can make a token that's a copy of a token you made off of Primordial Seas. So you can, like, if you roll Chaos on Kinda City Market, you make a token that's a copy of a land you copied. Can be kind of neat. Kambul the Sacred Valley is very solid. Ruins Missing Notes is very solid. Haven is good at coming up the boards, which this deck might like. You can chump the non-1/1s forever, pretty much. Yeah, that's true. It's just the sort of thing of, as you're making these 1/1s to chump, if you're staying on Fragile Haven, then your opponent's making these 1/1s as well. And if you're just always chump blocking with your Nomads, then they're progressing their board state with Fragile Haven, whereas you aren't so lucky. And again, it's a dynamic of Fragile Haven, where because it is on your end step, rolling the planar die is always accepting that your opponent is likely to be the last person to get the token off of Fragile Haven, which is really awkward, unless you arrived there on this turn and you're trying to get away from it as fast as possible because you're playing against Fragile Haven and you don't care for it. And then, of course, there is also just the reality of, giving your opponent the journey 3 times, then Planeswalk is also pretty debilitating. It is nice that if your opponent rolls the journey 3 times, they don't get the Nomad, but that does mean that you just gave them 3 cards to pseudo draw, which is really awkward. Yeah, I don't know. I have a low opinion of Fragile Haven. Ruins Missing Notes is sweet, though. Starfowl Glade just makes sense with the omens. Good with almost all of the creatures as well, because Gloomy Meteorologist is good to flicker. Stratus Fledgling is good to flicker. Host is good to flicker. Silenced Court makes sense here, as does the Source Chamber. If you're going to want to play things from your sideboard with your weather tools, might as well play things that let you get them from your sideboard naturally. Thorn Chapel makes sense here as well. Ukshu Wilds is pretty interesting. I suppose just building up those treasures to try and race towards Primordial Seas. Maybe that's why Castle Stelia is here too, actually. Kochiba Port. Yeah, just make these omens cost 1, make these instants cost 1. That's actually, Kochiba Port is really cool here. And then Korganals in Command, just getting the Scry 2 seems pretty clean. Yeah, cool deck. I know Magma's been really, really fighting to make this Stratus Fledgling plan thrive, so more power to him. Crush is milling us both. I'm just also going to take a moment to take a peek at okay, yeah. Looks like the All Who Wander thing is still getting resolved. Maybe it'll be resolved by the time we get there. Crush is milling us both. 4 copies of Rooftop Sling, 4 Finax Brazen Thief, and 3 Orestes Heroic Scoundrel. 4 Walk Among the Dead, 2 Festered Effluvium, 4 Traumatic Recollection, 4 Fenax's Judgment, 4 Chronicle of Precedence. Oh, Crush is doing Den Chronicle. Yeah, we'll get there. For Laystone of Ruin and for Path of Finax. I, especially after looking over the world's deck lists today, I'm fully of the belief that I think Path of Finax, from here until the end of time, if you're on this card nowadays, you want to be on Skotha. Because Skotha plus Path of Finax is just so debilitating. Path of Finax you play on 3. Turn 4, it drains your opponent for 2. Turn 5, you get the resources. If your opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard, you get to take a card from their graveyard and play it this turn. And then turn 6, you get to drop Skotha, make your opponent discard a card, and get back Path of Finax to make them discard another 2, and then mill 2. I am increasingly obsessed with the idea of Skotha with these like valuable 3-drop enchantments that like self-sack, especially if they don't cost mana to sacrifice. Skotha is just so sweet. Like new Skotha is, I think, one of the coolest cards in the format without necessarily being as abundantly broken as the old version. So land base here, 4 Temple of Origin, 1 Ephemeral Mire, 4 of each major fetch. 2 Mirage Island is interesting. What are you doing with Mirage Island? Is this... There's no landfall triggers here. Gets a Veilgate trigger? Skotha is everywhere in the world's lists. It really is. Like, you'd think Skotha didn't get nerfed with how popular it is in Worlds, but I think the correct answer is it's very popular in Worlds because the card is still super strong. It's just strong on a different vector, on a different axis than it was previously. Sideboard is 4 full Agent of Deception, 3 each of Maim, Agonizing Remorse, and Invasion's End, and 2 Search and Seizure. 5 hand attack cards is a statement, I feel. Search and Seizure plus Agonizing Remorse, both to pinpoint attack your opponent's hand, and then you've also got the 4 Path of Finax that can hit your opponent's hand. Yeah, that's a statement and a half for sure. And, Rooftop Slink can do the same. I do at least like that Laystone Everyone can be used to Cyber Soul Rooftop Slink as well. My big concern here is that so many of these cards that are milling your opponent are milling you as well. And then, of course, you've got Walk Among the Dead, Festered Effluvium, Traumatic Recollection that only mill you. Now, yes, you've got Fenax's Judgment and Chronicle of Precedence, which are big mill bombs that only mill target players, so you can mill your opponent, and especially if you can roll Den of the First Stream with Chronicle of Precedence. And this is something we are going to get into in a few moments with my deck. Den of the First Stream gives all of your instants and sorceries flashback in your graveyard, equal to their mana cost. So you can play the flashback cost of Chronicle of Precedence for 1 blue. And then make your opponent mill 21. Or draw 6. Or copy one of your creatures 3 times. Or some variation therein. It is such a sick combo to run that really just, like, it lets you just have Den of the First Stream be a means of murdering your opponent out of the graveyard with a single card for 3 mana. It just makes Den of the First Stream so sweet. And then Data Channels, Foundation Headquarters for Mill, Kaiwan Testing Ground for all of those sorceries to make 2/2s, and then can also rebind instant or sorcery on Chaos. Mysterious Ruins for Mill, obviously. Remembrance Tower for Mill for obvious reasons. Underworld for obvious reasons. Veilgate for obvious reasons. Mishiro Town and Ukshu Wilds. Ukshu Wilds. Is this really the treasure one that you want to run? Why Data Channels and only Data Channels as well? That is curious. Oh, take care, Viola. Yeah, I'm very curious as to why only Data Channels for the Nylon planes. Because I feel like if there's a particular clique that you're angling for, you really want to get as many of them, as many of the things that can make that clique as possible. So I have to imagine they're looking to get the Tyrell Pledge and start surveilling too with Data Channels. And at that point, Data Channels to surveil too seems really foundationally important for trying to help build your graveyard, fix your top decks, make sure you're drawing the things that you want to draw. You can even kind of rig your Festered Effluvium with the Surveil. The Chaos can buy back. I don't know, might have only wanted 10 planes, and this was the least offensive 10th. Oh, the Chaos can buy back on data channels. Yeah, maybe. Maybe. Yeah, it's definitely not an offensive 10th. It just makes me wonder, because especially looking at Ukshu Wilds, I can't help but wonder if, like, treasures was a thing that Crush was looking for, and at that point, could there be some merit in not running data channels and instead running Gravelgate Underpass, I believe is the black one, at which point you can choose to take the Tyrell pledge to Surveil to, or you can take the Vishanki pledge and build treasures. So you get that flexibility, but then of course, you know, that does give up the data channels chaos mode. So I feel like banking on the chaos modes is really risky because you have an equal chance of rolling chaos as you do leaving the plane that you're on. And especially if you're on 10 planes, you know, there are 10 competitors in this field with 15 planes. So being on a 10 plane deck, you're probably less incentivized to want to spin on a plane that you put into the deck, just because there is a higher likelihood that you roll into one of your opponents, just in the blind. So that being said, I like Mill in this field. I think the Mill planes are really good. I think Den of the First Dream is one of the best planes in the field. And I think some of the other planes that play nicely with Mill are just, you know, also inherently very strong. Silliman Pledge is also solid for a defensive option, though, yeah, treasure wanting, it's a choice. I think Silliman Pledge is not very good defensive, actually, because it taps down your opponent's creature on your turn, and then they get to untap it on their turn. And if you want it to put counters on your creatures, you need to tap your own creatures at the start of your turn, at which point you just take yourself off of a blocker for your opponent's turn. So I think Silliman Pledge is actively far more aggressive than it is defensive, which just means that it's like a non-starter option for data channels. And then on the same front, like if you want to get aggressive, this deck does not have a lot of creatures. You've got Rooftop Slinks, Phaenaxes, and Orestes. So at that point, you know, why are you taking the Silliman Pledge anyways when you could just take... You were thinking it was freezing. It does help Phaenax get in, I guess. It does help Phaenax get in. That is true. That is very true. Helps Rooftop Slink get in as well. That being said, I feel like Tyrell is just the only one that you want off of data channels, which just makes it awkward because it takes away some of that flexibility. And again, especially with the field being what it is, I really figured you would want to be on 15 planes for this field. So that being said, again, I think Mill is really well positioned here. So cheers to Crush on picking a deck I think is in a good spot overall. PTM is on Jund Ramp. Who could have guessed? Also on 10 planes here. I believe this looks to be the exact 60 that they are running in the Worlds tournament. And I know this both because I went over their deck today for the video. But I also, oh no, it was with Crumbling Tower in the sideboard. And 2 more lands in the main alongside, oh no, not necessarily 2 more lands. They're on, I think, 1 more land and then 2 more terminal impacts in the main. Yeah. Well, I like these decisions. That being said, the big thing, I almost queued up Jund Ramp, but I almost pivoted into Jund Ramp with the Den of the First Dream, and going towards a more graveyard-oriented strategy like the one that Philippe had been playing the last couple months, you know, with the Alrontan Visionaries and the higher quantity of Chronicle of Extinctions, and even going for Chronicle of Armageddon, the red one. And the reason why is because, you know, Den of the First Stream, casting Chronicle of Extinction flashback mode for 4 is backbreaking. Casting Chronicle of Armageddon for 3 mana deal 9 is backbreaking and kills people really quickly. But I ultimately didn't have enough time to really flesh that idea out as much as I could or would have wanted to. So I just decided to tune the idea that I wanted to bring originally. But yeah, this is a very solid plan. Crumbling Tower, not as needed to generate value in a plane chase environment, especially because planes are so good at just generating value naturally. Which I think there is something to say about, like, Chronicle of Extinction maybe not being as backbreaking for like the hand attack mode, just shredding all of your opponent's resources just because there are planes that can let you bounce back from having no resources. But of course, a lot of those planes rely on graveyards, and Chronicle Exile and Graveyards does that. And have I complained about Chronicle enough on this Chronicle Extinction enough on this channel yet? Plane cards are Ukshu Wild, Thorn Chapel, Test Site Syzygy, Setessa, Sanjara Raceway, New Teleson, Mishiro Town, Kambul the Sacred Valley, Gravelgate Underpass, and Gold Peak Gateway. These are, I think, the exact 10 that I started with when trying to figure out what a planar deck would look like for this strategy. I think I even talked about like something almost exactly like this. I think I just put it to a 15 plane card deck when I did my video breaking down like what plane decks could look like for specific strategies, and I showed off the Jund ramp strategy that PTM had been playing in prior months, or played in last month specifically. So, yeah, I think this would benefit from being on 15. But I also understand wanting to just kind of have specific planes you want to find more reliably, and doing 10 plane cards does mean that you have a higher chance of rolling a specific plane, even if you have a higher chance of also just rolling a generic plane of your opponent's choice that they brought to the table. Though, of course, some of the more popular planes are also solid for this strategy. If Thorn Chapel is played against me, my soul will leave my body. I've got good news for you, Panders. I think Thorn Chapel is overrated. Because here is why I say Thorn Chapel is overrated. I think the fact that you can try and get out of any plane for free once each turn means that inherently each plane is on a timer of some capacity. I think one of the big things to treat planes like Thorn Chapel is that it is just a tax effect. It is equivalent to like a ghostly prison, but it goes away once you get it to go away. You might have to pay some mana to get off of Thorn Chapel. You might even get to make a 3/3 angel or a 5/5 demon in the process. But eventually you will leave Thorn Chapel, and your opponent, might have bought a little bit of time. That is very true of Thorn Chapel, but it is not going to be the like game locking piece that I think some people are afraid of it being. And also, one of the things that's just very true is try and find creatures that are angels, clerics, and demons if you're really that concerned about Thorn Chapel. Though it's a little late at this point to be making that particular bit of advice. But yeah, this is not a very surprising deck for PTM to be bringing, and a pretty solid plane package. Though I think I really would have wanted to see full 10 or a full 15 here. Cajun is on Plane Collection. Ooh, hold on. What? Cajun is on White Black Scrapweight Plush Collection Cyber Soul? Okay, Cajun's cooking. So we've got Machinations and Dissect Intel for sorceries, and Scrapweight and Plush Collection for enchantments, as well as Maim, and we're going over the non-creatures first because we got to talk about these creatures. 3 Melon Defense Attorney, I think is very wise, especially if you're on some of the Pledge planes, just because you get that additional value right off the bat. And let Melon come in and immediately make a body alongside, or make a body if you're going to Hazak, or make a treasure immediately if you're going to Vishanki, or get value depending on what plane you go, or what clique you've already made with your planes. Contest Coordinator is just so good. It can fetch every creature beyond. It can fetch every creature besides itself in the deck. Can fetch all 7 planes in the mana base. Can fetch can fetch all 3 scrap weights in the enchantment slot, and then can also fetch the Army Reserves, Lost Resistors, Soothing Singers, General Diadem, and Soul Guide Lanterns out of the sideboard. I also love seeing General Diadem because there are some pretty brutal planes that target. Diadem is just a really, really smart include in that regard. So, Wayward Drek makes a cyborg on enter and when it transforms, and when it's transformed, it will also get +1/+1 for each other artifact you control. Alcadia Cardinal Judge makes you treasures when a player attacks 2 or more creatures, makes you a cyborg when a player casts their second spell each turn, and if you can ever Cyber Soul it, it's an indestructible artifact that makes you draw a card in addition to the treasure creation when the 2 or more creatures attacking happens, and then you get to make the cyborg and then put a counter on each cyborg you control when player casts their second spell. There's not many things people are playing that exile artifacts permanently. Really only disestablishmentarianism to my mind. So Omnithority is pretty safe to flip if and when you get the opportunity to flip it. Inspirited Ore, very, very nasty payoff to assembling just a mass quantity of artifacts. And, you know, something to be said of how good Inspirited Ore is with Plush Collection. Where you can just tap 3 artifacts on your turn, then tap 3 artifacts on your opponent's turn, then tap 3 more on your turn, then tap 3 more on your opponent's turn, and then just bounce back and forth between your turn and your opponent's turn, making a bunch of 1/1s that are actually like 10/10s. And then, of course, Pursuer of Divinity gets to go find your Wayward Drek or your Alcadia, or your Lost Resistor out of the sideboard. Or even go find another Pursuer of Divinity, and then, of course, if flipped into a Banner of Flesh, it is just such a nightmare to try and get off the board, because you have to remove it and then remove it again before it gets Cyber Sold. And, of course, you know, with Alcadia and Melan here in the main deck, that's a decent number of legendaries for Maim to just kind of be hard removal as well, which is solid. 1 each Coalesced Mesa, Coalesced Core, as well as 4 Gates to the Underworld, 4 Primal Fissure, 7 Plains, 6 Swamps. We went over most of the sideboard, but there's also Cold Populace here, which is pretty nice. And then a 15-card plain deck with Gorsand. Seems pretty good with the Plush Collection plan of just making a bunch of Melans with Plush Collection, or making a bunch of Wayward Dreks, or making a bunch of Inspirited Ores, and then Gorsand just murdering your opponent over time. Before the Chasmal Rift, they're not casting spells from outside of their hand. They're not playing cards from outside of their hand. So this is just for the Chaos mode, I think. Not crazy about Before the Chasmal Rift, but it is just a very, very spicy Chaos mode if you can roll that before you Planeswalk and you're just spinning a bunch. Remains of Morig Moor is amazing for this deck because of Wayward Drek, because of Alcadia, because of Inspirited Ore and Pursuer Divinity. This is the kind of deck that I figured, like, this is what Remains of Morig Moor and the similar planes like it were really, really angling to have, was just these Cyber Soul cards that really want you to have these just massive amounts of just random trinket tokens. Just as your test lab similarly works that way to just amass random trinket tokens. Queen Selena's Private Collection does the same. Ashen Forges does the same. Five Thorn Maw makes it so you can tap 2 untapped creatures you control to activate an ability. And, you know, Plush Collection, not necessarily activating any creature, but you do just assemble a wide board to get some Impulse Draw off of Five Thorn Maw, and obviously tapping your creatures to deal damage to your opponent is good when you have Inspirited Ore and Melan. Ruins of Elantian is very spicy to copy up some of your creatures, especially if they're flipped. Castle Stelia is nice to buy some time, make some treasures. Heaven's Impact is something that is only useful for a strategy like this, and it is a very good include because it is a plane you can almost always guarantee your opponent's not going to get value out of. Skycrest Estates, Gravelgate Underpass, and Test Site Syzygy looks like those are the only cliques here. White, black, and green. I'm curious to know what each of these is meant to be grabbing. I have to assume it's Skycrest Estates usually grabbing Silliman, Gravelgate and Test Site Syzygy usually grabbing Vishanki. Makes me wonder if maybe this was meant to be the red one, just so you'd have 3 different planes that could pledge to Vishanki and try and get that before Melan pledges to a different click. But obviously if you get Melan before you get any of these, then these just trigger the click that Melan created for you. Tawashi is a very spicy one as well. Equipment auras and +1/+1 counters. Not really doing that though. Tawashi feels a little weird. It's a good plane to try and roll away from and roll chaos, I guess. Then kind of City Market. Another one that feels weird here. And yeah, the toy is a black toy army. It's not an artifact creature. Just another one, I guess, is fine to roll chaos. But yeah, this is a sweet deck, and I'm a little nervous to be facing up against this in round one. But I'll get to show you a little bit of the nonsense I'm cooking. So this is Titan approved mid range. This is Titans and approval. We are golems. We are 5-color golems, but we're actually Sultai golems. So starting our curve off on Herald of Awakening, do have a bit of a graveyard package here with 4 Chronicle of Precedence, 2 Chronicle of Extinction, 2 Final Fate. So Herald can get some value out of that, or just pitching some of our higher end cards. Golems and suits that do taxes. That is correct. It is a golems and pledge and approval deck. It is all sorts of nonsense. So Herald of Awakening gets to filter things away. This is never going to be attacking. This is just going to get to, filter a card out of our hand for something better. The fact that it is draw then discard means it is always going to let us get rid of the worst card in our hand in any given circumstance. We're never going to have to get rid of a card we like to try and find a better card. It's one of the benefits of it being draw then discard here. And it is a golem, which is really important because we are on 4 Unspeaking Titan, 4 Unflinching Titan, and 3 Unyielding Titan. Obviously, people know what these do. Unspeaking freezes something, gives your golems ward. Unflinching surveils one that gets a land to play tapped, give your golems trample. Unyielding Titan strips a card from your opponent's hand or graveyard, gives your golems menace. And all of them, you can pay 3, tap to make a 1/1 white golem, and they can't attack unless you control, or blocking unless you control 3 or more golems. So we got the golem plan here. None of this making tokens that I can make typed golem nonsense. No ragtag squads here. We were just playing actual factual golems, and they are backed up by some other nonsense. Chromagoyf here. I believe I'm on the full 5. Yeah, you can see them here at the top of my planar deck. The full 5 Nylon planes here. Just trying to make sure I can fine tune Chromagoyf as consistently as possible. I'm fine with this being a 3/3, but it's very possible for this to be a 4/4 or even a 5/5, depending on what plane I wind up on to have me pledging. And in the worst case scenario, I don't have to just rely on my planes to pledge. I'm also on 4 each of Corrupt Congressmen and Grassroots Campaigners. Congressmen and Campaigners both work pretty nicely with some of the other themes in the deck. Campaigners working really nicely with the fetches and working nicely with Unflinching Titan. Congressmen working very nicely with some of my planes that we'll get into. This deck is not going to have a problem trying to find ways to spend its mana between, the activated abilities on the Titans and the activated ability on the Cliques. This deck's going to just have a lot of opportunities to spend a lot of mana because we've also got 8 flashback spells. We've got 2 Final Fates, 4 Chronicle of Precedence, which can copy up our golems here to get additional triggers off of our golems. And if we get to Den of the First Stream, we can cast this for 3, mill our opponent for 21, or copy, say, our Unyielding Titan 3 times, take away 3 cards in our opponent's hand. I feel like we might have been short on hard control where a deck like this might struggle. It looks really good into the pool we've seen so far. Yeah, I'm really hoping this deck can do some funny, funky things. I'm not super optimistic. This was pure deck theory and not really getting to see too much in practice here. But I'm optimistic for how nonsensical this could be. And then 2 Chronicle of Extinction, because if you can't beat them, join them. I hate this card so much, but I at least get to practice what I preach in really kind of trying to prove why I think this card is still a little egregious. Granted, this is a bad season to do so because I'm going to be getting to flash this back for 4 mana, but I still don't like this card. It hurt my soul to be playing this card, but I'm just gonna play one of the best cards in the format right now. I'm just gonna have to accept it. I played it in February, so it's not like it's the first time I've played Chronicle. And then 2 Gaze Upon Civilization, because if I'm doing approval stuff, both of my internal pledge abilities can pledge to Vishanki, and Vishanki plus Gaze Upon Civilization is approval 4, at which point Gaze Upon Civilization lets me play any of my cards off the top. And, you know, the only thing better than Chronicle of Extinction for 4 is Chronicle of Extinction off the top for 0. Yeah, I really like Gaze here. And one of the other things that I think is nice is my particular arrangement of pledges. I am very often going to be looking either at pledging Tyrael or pledging Vishanki. So either way, so either of the two that I might want, Corrupt Congressman can get. Grassroots can only get me Vishanki, but that's a small price to pay. And then I get, you know, either way, I'm getting 3 colors that are all really important. I'm never going to get the full 5 approval in most of these situations. So Chromaglyph is almost always going to be a 4/4 at its maximum. But that's still fine. It's a 2-mana 4/4 with trample. And I think a 2-mana 4/4 is going to be very relevant into some of the bodies that we're going to see in this field. So no complaints there. But because I'm looking at Tyrael and Vishanki specifically, if I get Tyrael, then I literally just need to get one of my green creatures for Gaze Upon Civilization to be approval 4. And if I get Vishanki, then Gaze by itself is approval 4. So pretty nice on that respect. I'm on 3 Primal Fissure, 2 Redeveloped Cityscape. I really wanted to do more fetches for Grassroots Campaigners and Unflinching Titan, but ultimately I didn't want to go too deep on that, in part because I wanted to play some copies of Nascent Lightvein and Deep Life Cavern, and the more of these non-basics that I play, the harder it is to justify wanting these fetches in my mind. Then we have 4 each of Swamp Island and Forest. You know, Forest we might, in theory, want more of for Deep Life Cavern, but ultimately we are like a lot of blue and black spells, especially like our sorceries are very blue and black dense comparatively to our main deck, where like everything is single pipped in our main deck. So 1 forest lets us cast any of our green spells. So yeah, this is a really good curve for Gaze Upon Civilization, which is part of why I'm so excited to get to play it here. And, you know, 23 lands, trying to, you know, especially with the fetches, try and thin our deck, minimize the chance for a land to be on top for Gaze Upon Civilization. Sideboard is 2 Judge, Jury, and Executioner, trying to pick off creatures against, you know, opposing more aggressive decks, and also can, you know, fly in to deal some additional damage over the top. Turn to Nyx as a full play set. I do have some milling clicks, and of course I have Chronicle of Precedence as well to mill my opponent, so that can help Turn to Nyx always just be like hard counterspell. But also just realistically, I think this is a card that I think a lot of people slept on for a while, and especially with my experience in it, on it last month, I have started liking Turn to Nyx a lot more. 2 copies of Final Fate to round out the full play set between main and side. 3 Forget Their Names. 2 more Chronicle of Extinction for the full play set, and then 2 more Gaze Upon Civilization, just in case I feel like I need that extra value. Because I can definitely anticipate running into some decks where I feel like it is going to be a value grind. For the full planar deck, I mentioned I am on the full 5 Nylon planes here. I think if there are 2 different cliques that you could conceivably care about, having all 5 is very nice, especially if those 2 cliques you care about only overlap on a specific color. And of course, this was the basis of wanting to care about approval at all with Gaze Upon Civilization and Chromaglyph, was that I cared about all of these individual planes. That is backed up by Prismatic Pool, which is meant to try and get some leverage off of targeting enemy colors with some of our spells. Not too much value here in the main, but we can get some value off of, you know, blowing up a green creature with Final Fate, or copying one of our. Cajun said the All Who Wander list is mostly fixed, so okay, cool. I can refresh when we get there. But you know, I can Chronicle of Precedence, say an Unflinching Titan, and then draw a card from copying that with Prismatic Pool as well. And then of course, because I'm on Sultai, I have a lot of flexibility for the Chaos mode on Prismatic Pool to just blow up multiple permanents of my opponents. Sanjara Raceway, obviously, you know, with all of my creatures being single pipped, the like cost 2 less planes are really solid here. You know, make my Gaze Upon Civilization cost 2, make one of my Titans cost 2 less, get a Corrupt Congressman or Grassroots Campaigners for 1, or an Unflinching Titan for 1. Makes Herald of Awakening a little bit better as well, because this can help tee up the Sanjara Raceway. Veda's Club, a little more unreliable than some of the others, but it was just sort of something I wanted to get in here to help push that full trying to get the cost reducers in. And this one can get some value out of specifically the Corrupt Congressman tormenting my opponent, which could be nice. Satessa is probably the best of the cost reducers just for the fact that it lets me just hard cast one of my things immediately. Ruins of Elantine is especially spicy for the same reason I'm on the full playset of Chronicle of Precedence in the main. I can just go to end step and copy my Unyielding Titan and snipe something from my opponent's hand every turn, and then gradually just spiral my board out of control until all of my creatures are Unyielding Titans that can just attack and push a ton of damage to my opponent while stripping away all their resources. Then in the first stream, I've already explained, really good with Chronicles. Not so good with Final Fate, not so good with, Turn to Nyx, but also still, decent with Forget Their Names, better to flash this back for 2/4. And, with Chronicle of Precedence being something of a, alt win con with mill, then in the first stream here with the Chaos mode, just milling each player for 10 is pretty brutal, especially when I'm also on Remembrance Tower. Milling each player for 2 when you arrive or when a creature dies is pretty nice when I'm on a 27 creature deck. Makes my Herald of Awakenings being able to block a little bit better. And then the Chaos mode, I am incentivized to want to try and spin away from Remembrance Tower, because if I roll Chaos, I need 4 cards in my graveyard for Remembrance Tower to be able to reanimate any creature in my graveyard, which is just great, especially when I already have tools like Herald of Awakening to fill my graveyard innately. And obviously showing up on Remembrance Tower is going to put 2 cards in my graveyard on its own. Then I also have Starfowl Glade, flicker any of my Titans, get their abilities at my end step, untap them as well. Not so good for, flickering Gaze Upon Civilization, but I can flicker Corrupt Congressmen or Grassroots Campaigners. I can even just untap a Chromagoyf if I need to, or flicker a Herald of Awakening to loot, which can be nice. Akros is actually a bit of a, funky include here. This is a kind of a risk I'm taking, but this is me just sort of saying, this deck can potentially just get all of its things into play and just have a bunch of mana to spend. And if I've got a bunch of mana to spend, I might as well just roll away from Akros, try and roll Chaos, and hey, maybe I get to flicker 2 Unyielding Titans or 2 Unflinching Titans or 2 Unspeaking Titans, and that's pretty nasty. This is the worst plane in my planar deck by far, but I just wanted to get 15 and I was struggling to find a 15th. And then finally, the Silenced Court. I maybe could have looked at Thorn Chapel instead of Akros to try and buy myself some time, especially with me playing 11 creatures that cannot innately block. But I think the Silenced Court is just way more interesting here. The -1/-1 counters don't kill any of my creatures innately, other than, of course, my tokens off of the, golem tokens. But part of the build of the deck is that I'm not reliant on making the golems off of these as much. So the Silenced Court can just be more of a nuke to my opponent's board, and when we leave the Silenced Court, I just get to get all of my Titan triggers and all of my pledge triggers off of the Congressmans and the Campaigners. And because it's such a value bomb when I leave the Silence Court, I'm incentivized to try and spin for Chaos on the Silence Court. Maybe I can take one of my opponent's creatures and get that, which can be pretty nice. I have no idea how this is going to play. Part of me wonders if I should have just tried to make the Jund Graveyard deck work. Titans decks are surprisingly fast, so Akros seems like a sleeper pick. Yeah, that's also fair. I think the big reason why I'm a little nervous about Akros is because I'm not on the golem token plan as much, because I'm not on Ragtag Squad, because I'm not on the white spell with flashback on landfall. I'm a little more apprehensive about Akros, but it is just nice to be able to have all of my things. Chromagoyf already has trample, and Flinching Titan gives my golems trample, but it's nice to get my Grassroots Campaigners and Corrupt Congressman trample, I guess. And +1/+0, the +1/+0 is real. So and again, the Chaos mode on Akros is crazy if I can get it. Volt Switch is on double tap, another Savvy Smith deck. Oh no. Oh no. Brass Oracle. No one locks Brass Oracle and is doing anything responsible, and I see you in chat, Volt Switch, so I can tell you are here to do some nonsense. 4 Savvy Smith, 2 Pensive Caldera, 3 Brass Oracle, and the full 4 Covetous Frostworm. Let's see that. No Karsi's Spine. Interesting. We're on another 10 plane deck. I guess you get to leverage Chipmunk being on Carsey's spine if you run into that matchup with the Frostworm. 2 Seafloor Treasures, 4 Forced Ejection. Ooh, I like that. 4 Light Vein Arrow, 4 High Voltage, 4 Igneous Visions, 4 Terminal Impact, and 2 Lightspeed. Only 2 Lightspeed Launchers. Interesting. 8 Mountain, 7 Island, 4 Nimbus of Thought, and 4 Temple of Origins. No fetches as well. I feel like that might actually just be very responsible, only running the fast lands that are always going to make mana regardless. Then you've got the Savvy Smiths and the Pensive Calderas to kind of loot those away if you don't care. Not on the Industrializes. Sideboard is 4 Android Stunner, 2 Seafloor Treasures combined with a 2 in main, 4 Turn to Nyx, 2 Rebuke the Mighty. Usually you don't need the extra launcher. That's fair. 2 Rebuke the Mighty, return target creature to its owner's hand, return a creature with the greatest power or tied for the greatest power to its owner's hand. Oh, that's cool. And then pull the wires. This version has a lot more board impact instead of digging. That's neat. Yeah, I think that's pretty cool. Just get more things that can be relevant bodies on the board, or Pensive Caldera, which makes mana. And when you're not on Industrialize, suddenly the mana off of Pensive Caldera is more meaningful because it does help meaningfully pay for your Seafloor Treasures, does meaningfully pay for your Forced Ejection, obviously meaningfully pays for all of your red spells, and meaningfully pays for Lightspeed Launcher. So, that is one of the things I felt when I was trying to build my March deck last month, and was looking at the Pensive Calderas that were in the version I had initially started on by PTM, and I felt like I didn't want the Pensive Calderas because I wanted the Industrializes, and they were just very incongruent in terms of Caldera really not helping the Industrializes at all. So very nice bit of synergy there. We are on data channels here. Suspect this could be for the same reason that we saw it in PTMs, or not in PTMs, in scrolling up. Crush's deck, the mill deck. Suspect it might be for the same reason of, maybe you can get the Tyrell click, and then this can also just have the chaos mode to, rebuy one of your non-creature spells. Den of the First Stream for obvious reasons. I like Den of the First Stream here, especially when you have far fewer flashback spells. Eltenzia's Toll for obvious reasons, 4th Street for obvious reasons, Kaiwan's Testing Ground for obvious reasons, Sandra Raceway, yeah, makes your Brass Oracles and Covetous Frostworms cost 1 for the second spell. Not very good with Terminal Impact, but that's just kind of the cost of playing Terminal Impact with cost reducers. Golden Palace makes sense, Source Chamber makes sense, Tower of the Tech Magi, and Courier Station all make sense here. Seems like a solid plan. Seafloor Surface is aight. Yeah, Seafloor Surface, getting to discount the surface cost of Seafloor Treasures, or even just the main cost of Seafloor Treasures with Sanjay Raceway is pretty solid. And hey, the Seafloor Treasures in your sideboard, not only something that you could reasonably sideboard in if you just want a bit more card selection, also good if you hit the Source Chamber, so you get some card selection out of your sideboard. And when your card selection's out of your sideboard, you're actually just fully drawing a card. So that's nice. Epids, but how did I get here? Okay, yeah, this is just the infinite build of Chipmunk's Savvy Smith deck. So this is 3 Savvy decks in this field. So I covered this deck in my part 3 of the Plane Chase series. 4 Savvy Smith, 4 Covetous Frostworm, 1 each of Blistering Cryo Phoenix and Keranos. From what I have heard, Keranos is really not that well performing in this deck. So I would not be surprised to find out that Epid boards this out every game. 3 Light Vein Arrow, 2 Seafloor Treasures, 3 High Voltage, 4 Industrialize, 4 Igneous Visions, 3 Firebolt, 2 Face the Phoenix, 4 Lightspeed Launcher, and 3 Aqua Crew Flagship, alongside 22 lands, 4 Temples, 4 Primal Fissures, 2 Nimbus of Thoughts, 2 Redeveloped Seascapes, 5 Islands, 5 Mountains. Sideboard is 2 Ardor, Forefront of Freedom, 4 Turn to Nyx, 3 Molten Erosion, 2 Wormshot, 2 Terminal Impact, and 2 Soul Guide Lantern. Planar deck includes 4th Street to kill your opponent when you cast a bunch of spells on your turn, 1 Den of the First Dream for the flashback nonsense, Prismatic Pool, so you can maybe generate some card advantage by using your Firebolts and your other burn spells on blue and white creatures. Veilgate to do some surveilling, Veda's Club to spectacle and reduce the costs of your Akraku flagships and your Covetous Frostworms and your Savvy Smiths. And, you know, Veda's Club, very easy to be enabled in this deck thanks to, you know, just some of the ways that you can push damage over the top. Jericho's Abandoned Office, not too good here, I think, but is just serviceable. And if you ever roll Chaos when you've generated a couple clues here, then this does just murder your opponent very quickly. Before the Chasmal Rift, very good with all of these flashback spells. Kaiwan's Testing Ground for obvious reasons, Sanjara Raceway for obvious reasons, Tower of the Tech Magi for obvious reasons, capable of going infinite with Blistering Cryo Phoenix, plus Industrialize or Igneous Visions to just draw your whole deck. Karsi's Spine to get Covetous Frostworm out for 1. Remains of Morig Moor to get some value as you draw a bunch of cards. Mishiro Town to get some extra consistency with your mana base. Coyer Station to put some extra bodies into play. And then Bura Depths is how we know for a fact that this was Epid just ripping the 5-0 deck list out of the deck lists channel, which no shame to that. You know, it got 5-0 for a reason, but Bora Depths is one of the worst planes in the field. And Chipmunk, I know, has identified that this was the worst plane deck in their lineup because the timing on Bora Depths is just so awkward. Vila's The Singularity Enjoyer has logged on. We've got Singularity here with Den of the First Dream not present? How do you play Singularity without Den of the First Dream? Come on. Aw. And Viola left us. Viola's not in chat. I understand, though. This is Viola wanting to play Extraction Mission. Didn't even think about Karsi's Spine plus Frostworm. Yeah, Karsi's Spine plus Frostworm is the big reason to like Karsi's Spine. It's very good with Dragon Age as well, but Frostworm being 1 mana, it is so hard to fight on the early turns. Also, Pander's not mono black. Look at these mountains. There's 2 mountains here. You know, no red spells. But there's Extraction Missions. That one's red mana. Gloomy Meteorologist, Corrupt Congressman, Data Weaver, Inner Rings Pupil, and Host of the Never-Ending Revel, as well as Singularity, Extraction Mission, Killing in the Name of, and Final Fate, as well as Phynax's Touch, Cutting Room Floor, and The Path of Phynax. With the 8 fetches, 2 mountains, 12 swamps, sideboard of 2 out with the old, 1 terminal impact. So hey, there's a red spell. There's 1 red spell. 3 Dissect Intel, 2 Drown in Sorrow, 3 Chronicle of Extinction, 1 Falling Ashes, 1 Sandstorm, both presumably to be gotten off of Gloomy Meteorologist. If you don't want the 3/3, it pledges. Wait, pledges, what do you mean? Killing in the Name of? Notorious red spell, Killing in the Name of. Oh, yeah. I don't remember calling it a red spell. No, it's Extraction Mission that you get the red for with Mountain. And then you got the 1 terminal impact in the sideboard. That's a red spell. Then Soul Guide Lantern. 15 playing card deck with Data Channels, Gold Peak Gateway, Gravel Gate, Enderpass. On the specifically... So hold on, there's also Test Site, Syzygy, and Skycrest. Okay, so it is the full suite of Nyland planes. I would imagine this is very similar to what I had established was my intention with the planes, where it is often going to be Tyrael or Vishanki, depending on what you wind up on. Whereas I feel like my deck skews towards maybe trying to do Vishanki over Tyrael just to try and get more cards out of hand. I could totally see... the approach that Viola is going for here, trying to, like, if you end up on Gravelgate Underpass and get your choice, taking Tyrael before you take Vishanki, just so you can try and fill your graveyard for Extraction Mission and fine-tune your top decks. We've got Halls of Valor as the tournament is named. Good for more aggressive decks, good for turning sideways. Justiciar Test Lab is interesting. Mokar Valley is very good with all these creatures. I maybe should have been on Mokar Valley, actually. Choose Hazak for the extra damage. Yeah, that makes sense. Just more bodies to go wide with. Seems logical. Mokar Valley, Setessa, Skycrest Estates. Also, I'm just realizing now I should have taken Mokar Valley instead of Akros. Akros is good, but Mokar Valley just making my like Unspeaking Titans cost 1 and my Grassroots Campaigners and Congressmen costing 2. That would have been so good. So Mokar Valley was the correct pick there. The other pledges, the Ashen Forges, the Golden Palace, Korgan Oz in Command, Lower Techian, Starfowl Glade, and the Veilgate. I like Starfowl Glade with these enchantments especially. God, Starfowl Glade with Path of Phenax is nasty. And hey, we're at Pander's Mono Black Aggro. What is this? Oh, Ephemeral Mire, I see. Ephemeral Mire with 18 swamps for a 20 land base, 4 Rooftop Slink, 4 Aphanize Reveler, 4 Phenax's Confidant, 4 Pressuring Ghoul, and 3 Barbarous Rough Rider with 3 Out with the Old, 3 Final Fate, 4 Phenax's Touch, 3 Pull of Tizerus, 4 Kakamanti's Circle. God, that is a nightmare to say. And 4 Aspect of the End. Oh, lordy. I see the Altenzia's Toll in your planar deck already. That is mortifying. I didn't even think about Aspect of the End with Gore Sand and all of the other planes that damage your opponent. Oh my god. Aspect of the End gets so much better in this field. Well observed, Panders. Sideboard. Also, yeah, Woo Pressuring Ghoul. I want an excuse to play this card so badly. 4 Lurking for Colossus, 1 Barbarous Rough Rider, 1 Out with the Old, 1 Final Fate, 4 Agonizing Remorse, 1 more Pull of Tizerus, and 3 Path of Phenax. Playing your deck of Akros to push damage, which makes sense, and then you can flicker your Barbarous Rough Riders. Really the only one that likes getting flickered, but it's up to. So you could just, if you're ever rolling away from Akros, you could just try and flicker your Barbarous Rough Riders. Or just don't roll away from Akros. It seems good for this deck. Eltenzia's Toll is terrifying with Aspect of the End. So is Gore Sand. Halls of Valor makes sense with the deck trying to push a lot of things sideways. Justiciar Test Lab, I'm a little dubious of, but it sure does help pay the Cybersoul on Rooftop Slink. Lower Techian, good with Aspect of the End. Remains of Morig Moore, good with Rooftop Slink. Rio Mancuna is weird. You've got to explain to me why you're playing Rio Mancuna, because I don't get it. This is one of the weirdest planes to me. It feels like it is great to start on like turn 1, and then after like turn 1 or 2 or maybe 3, it is such a clunky plane to wind up on. Ruins of Paro Katsang does not surprise me. Ashen Forges is especially great in aggro decks, especially aggro Cybersoul decks. I think this is the best artifact plane, quite honestly. The Crossroads. What different creature types do you have? Human, Rogue, Cyborg, Spectre, Satyr, Zombie, Regular Zombie, Spirit, Human, Knight. Couple overlaps, but it's a brick for opponents, and I like it early for Rio. Okay, that's fair. Yeah, you know, bricks for your opponents if you're just trying to get the full 15 makes sense. The Tugay is terrifying. Here's a pitch. If you want to have more planes that are good for pushing a lot of momentum, why are you on the Tugay but not Zolo's Ring? Because Zolo's Ring is also very good for momentum. It's a plane that, you know, you get to make the token on your upkeep. And because you make it on upkeep, there's incentive to try and spin the planar die to try and get away from it to deny your opponent that resource. And the Chaos mode has the wonderful upside of you just getting to make a bunch of your creatures 5/5s for the turn, which I feel like kills people very fast in this deck. I think it's honestly safer than the 2K, despite the 2K representing more innate damage. Um, I don't know. I think if you're playing one, you want to be on both, but I could understand reasons for not wanting to be on Zolo's Ring. I just think Zolo's Ring is so good for aggressive decks like this. 5 Thorn Maw. Zolo's Ring seemed like it would eventually make it really hard to swing in by coming up with 3/3s, but you were probably right. I never tested this or played any plane chase games. Yeah, that could do it. 5 Thorn Maw is very scary. Seat of the Rose Court. God, the fact that this is individual triggers for each creature you tap. Aspect of the End just murders people with this thing. It's one of those things where I don't imagine we will get like much in the way of like plane chase card reworks. But 5 Thorn Maw is kind of ridiculous. This plane is terrifying. And it made it very hard for me to justify not playing aggro in some capacity. Seat of the Rose Court seems pretty solid, especially with Aspect of the End. And then Starfowl Glade. Yeah, just flicker your Phalanx's touches, why don't you? Silvers, when in doubt, Jund 'em out. Silver on Jund ramp with Ardor? What a shocker. All the love here. I know Silver has just been wanting to get good results with Ardor since this card was printed, and I understand. Speculative Stockbroker and Sunsoaker up to Astrathian Gentrifiers into Yen Slopeskidder and Ardor, and then finally topping off the curve with Hoenn Champion and Warden of Tremors. Jack Monster Mentor as a Planeswalker. Got 2 Terminal Impact, 4 Abominable Avalanche, 3 Chronicle of Extinction, and 3 Root Fossil. One thing that I think is really worthwhile is even if you're not on Den of the First Stream, just playing the Chronicles seems really good in this tournament, in part because other people are going to want to bring Den of the First Streams, and then you just get to blow them out with your own Chronicle, which is just profoundly demoralizing. 24 lands with 3 Primal Fissure, 2 Redeveloped Cityscape, 1 Looming Skyscrapers, 1 Vishanki District, 2 Nessian Woods, 1 Temple of Abandon, 1 Temple of Malady, 6 Forest, 4 Mountain, 3 Swamp. The one note I have here is I feel like Looming Skyscrapers, while I talked about it in my Worlds video, that I think, Looming Skyscrapers is really getting to show off how good it can be to have a pledge land, even if you have nothing else that can pledge, especially if it's an enemy color pledge land, because you just get to make any of the 5 cliques. Because of how enemy colors overlap with the cliques. I feel like Looming Skyscrapers is so much worse in the plane chase environment, specifically because you can just get mana-less clique generation with Data Channels, Goldpeak Gateway, Gravelgate, Underpass, and of course we have Skycrest Estates and Test Site Syzygy here, so 5 of the 15 planar cards here are just dedicated to generating one of the cliques, and at which point it's really hard to sell me on Looming Skyscrapers beyond, I guess, it being 1 more point of power for Astrathian Gentrifiers, but that's not a huge sell in my mind. That being said, easy to just default to playing Looming Skyscrapers because of how solid it is in these ramp shells, especially with Astrathian Gentrifiers and the ramp package in current constructed. Sideboard is 4 Liquidate, 2 Terminal Impact, 3 Dissect Intel, 3 Agot Divided, and 3 Crumbling Tower. Yeah, it's sweet main deck for sure. This is a sweet main deck that I know Silver has just been jamming in various combinations for a while now. And again, I don't blame him. It is a very, very good plan. The planes make sure you always have something to do so the mana sinks aren't as worth it. Yeah, exactly. Because... this is something I kind of felt when I was building my deck, and I'll scroll back up to my deck just to talk about it. I have the mana sinks of, cliques, and I have the mana sinks of golem making off of the Titans if I can't attack with them. So it creates this really awkward problem of, if I'm on a plane I don't like, why would I ever spend mana on the Titans or the cliques when I could just spend mana on the planes? And so part of why I wound up on 15 planes was both to have that added consistency of ending up on something I care about over what my opponent cares about, but also just a basis of, if I'm on a plane I care about and it's not something I mind my opponent being on, I have every reason in the world to not spin the planar dice, even if the chaos mode is pretty good, because I have other ways of spending my mana. And the last thing I want to do is try and spin away from the plane I'm currently on into something my opponent cares about. because then I would want to spend more mana on things that aren't making golems or pledging to my cliques. So when in doubt, Jund them out. The planar deck here is Akros, which makes sense. These are some pretty stompy things to get. And then I guess Akros can specifically flicker Estrathian Gentrifiers and Yens, and Hoenn Champion is nice to flicker as well. Butani Pass, very good with the extra ramp and land placement that you have in the deck. Korgan Ozen Command is nice. We got the full suite of Nyland lands, or Nyland Plains. Gravelgate Underpass, or sorry, Hollow Arts District. I feel so weird about, but I feel like if any deck's going to be able to put it to use, it is this one. Kindness City Market, much better in a ramp shell like this, I think. Mokar Valley, again, like, I don't know how I glossed over Mokar Valley. It is so good. Zatessa, very good here. New Tellison, very good in ramp. More of the Pledge Plains, the Tugay, and Ukshu Wilds. All right. Tomas's Black-Green Chronicles. Wait, no, Blue-Green Chronicles with a combo finish. What? Tomas on 11 planes. We do have Den of the First Dream here, so we know that they are doing Den with one each of Chronicle of Precedence and Chronicle of Awakening. It's interesting. We've got 4 Tough Nut, 2 Olronson Visionary, 2 Wrecking Whale is weird. I will acknowledge one of the things I was thinking about going into this tournament was specifically trying to do Tough Nut plus Cryptolab, because the restrictions on their mana is very good for being able to pay for spinning the planar dice. And that was something that I kind of failed to truly get to live up to with this strategy that I brought. But nice to see somebody is recognizing the power of Cryptolab and Tough Nut in this environment. 3 Seafloor Treasures, 4 full Avert Disaster, 4 Industrialize, 1 Budding Potential. Oh my god, leveraging the power of Budding Potential plus Den of the First Dream. This was something I was really eager to try and just could not bring myself to do it. It is nice to see somebody trying to Budding Potential, and I might have to force myself to spectate every single one of Tomas's games just on the off chance they get to Den of the First Dream, Budding Potential, get all 21 lands into play. And of course, with that in mind, we've got Cradle of Rebirth, Islands, Forests, Controlled Ecosystem, Shell Cove, Temple of Mystery, Temple of Origins, and not a single fetch to be seen. Because when you're Budding Potential for all of your lands, who wants to have a fetch land that doesn't tap for mana? Grow Over, also good with fetching. Or also good with Den of the First Dreams, rather. Elder Eras, especially good with Den of the First Dream. And then Root Fossils, Aqua Crew Flagships, and Cryptolabes. Sideboard is 3 Scuttling Cicada, 2 Covetous Frostworm, 2 Hungry Blob, 3 Callisto's Confiscation, 3 Recycle of Life, and 2 Chronicle of Awakening. 2 more Chronicles of Awakening, but not of Precedence is interesting. Planar deck is 11. We've got Data Channels, Before the Chasmal Rift, Den of the First Dream, Foundation Headquarters, Jericho's Abandoned Office again. Is there something I'm missing on Jericho's Abandoned Office? Is it just that people are like, well, I'll just roll a planar dice, and if I get the 4/4s, then I kill you? Maybe it is. I feel like people are really eager on rolling the dice, maybe. I guess this is a deck that can afford to roll the dice a lot. Something, eggs and baskets. If Den ever flips, it's over. Yeah. I mean, I feel like either you want 15 planes always, or there's a specific plane you're building around, and you're so dedicated to making that plane crack your deck wide open that you want to be on 10. And in this case, this feels like you want to be on 10 because Den of the First Dream is so foundationally important to some of the inclusions in your sorcery suite. But I don't know. Kaiwan's Testing Grounds makes sense. Mysterious Ruins is especially funny because, like, I guess you can, like, mill your opponent for 3 by flashing back Grow Over for its normal flashback cost. That doesn't seem super relevant, but the Chaos mode is nice. Remembrance Tower is solid, but not amazing in this deck, I think. Ozon Wood. Oh, you know, actually, yeah, this does discount flashback costs. Yeah. Something I didn't really spend too much time thinking about, but Ozon Wood is not too shabby. for specifically this kind of strategy. The Underworld, much better for this like self-mill style deck, and then Tower of the Tech Magi for obvious reasons, especially sick with Cryptolabe. Though awkward because you only have so many instants of sorceries that you'd want to cast from outside of your hand in any given point in time. Kilgaris is on... oh, I see a change between Kill's version of Pander's version. I read Red's non-red deck, and it fills me with dread. Thanks for making me read that, Kilgaris. Yeah, this looks like it's pretty similar, except one less Ephemeral Mire for one more Swamp, which I think is a reasonable choice to make. And yeah, it looks like it's the exact same planar deck here. So 2 mono black and 3... at least 3, I think actually more than 3 of the Savvy Smith Covetous Frostworm decks. All right, we're going to roll, refresh the page here to try and see if All Who Wander's deck is correctly fixed. Yep, not going to lose to Mill. Oh my god. It should be pretty much the exact same. I just dread the mirror, so much damage from planes. I think I hard Mill for aspect. That makes sense. Yeah, All Who Wander does not want to lose to Mill. Noted. I am never using my Chronicles of Precedence to target my opponent to mill them. What the fuck? I think All Who Wander wins for the spiciest deck in the pool. We have 4 Aphanize Reveler, 70 Shiny Relentless Bats, 48 9-shiny Relentless Bats, 4 Fennex Brazen Thief, 4 Thassa's Tide Shaper. No wonder their deck broke. Yeah, right? 4 Seafloor Treasures, 4 Get Your Wish, 4 All That Remains, 4 Avert Disaster, 4 Industrialize, 4 Forget Their Names, 4 Cryptology, 4 Fennex's Judgment, 4 Lost to Memory, 4 Traumatic Recollection, 4 Ripples of History, 4 Chronicle of Precedence, 4 Unhallowed Voyage, 4 Spore Spawning. I'm just going to stop saying 4 because it's playsets of everything. Playset of Laystone of Ruin and of Shrine to Fennex and Cryptolabe and Deep Life Cavern, Ephemeral Mire, Frigid Highlands? What? Why are you playing the green one? What are you spending green mana on? Oh, Spore Spawning. Oh yeah, there are forests here. All right. And also pays for Cryptolabe, I guess. Oh my god, Spore Spawning. Spore Spawning with 130 creatures. And 89 lands. That's insane. 4 Hollowed Chamber, Hozik District, Nascent Light Vein, Primal Fissure, Redeveloped Cityscape, Vishanki District. I have never seen a deck where I've been so okay with 8 fetches. Like, go off. You have more than enough basics that your fetches will always find what you need. Like, unless you really build 5 forests somehow. 5 forests, 17 each of island and swamp, and then 14 mountains. The sideboard cards, which are almost never coming up, unless... Nope, no source in the planar deck. 4 Dissect Intel, 4 Chronicle of Extinction, 3 Path to Fennex, and 4 Soul Guide Lantern. My only note here is why 10 planar cards? If you're going to play a main deck that's like 130, 170... 186, 190, 198, 278 plus 9 is 287. You are playing a 287 card main deck. Why are you going to the minimum number of planes? Just play more. Mokar Valley with Relentless Bats is so smart. Because, you know, the change to Relentless Bats on the surface cost, making it so it still costs 1 generic to surface. Not with Mokar Valley, it doesn't. That's free to surface, baby. Foundation Headquarters, obviously. Mill each player for 8, but that hurts you almost not at all. Same with Remembrance Tower. Mysterious Ruins, the Ozon Wood. Ozone Wood doing the same thing as Mokar Valley in this deck for the bats. Always want the mill planes as much as possible. That's fair. The Underworld seems insane in this deck. Data Channels, Gravelgate, Underpass, and Skycrest Estates, all for Tyrell Click, and then the Veilgate. Yeah, this deck is ridiculous. And it scares me so much that I think this deck is actually really good for being a 287 card main deck. All Who Wander out here really leveraging the fact that we don't have to manually shuffle these decks. Because if this were an in-person tournament, I think All Who Wander would never do this. If this was like a paper format, I don't think they would put themselves through this. Philippe Unjund Ramp. This is 4 Stockbroker, 3 Visionary, 2 Scotha, 4 Warden, as well as 1 Vasilisa, 1 Czar, 1 All That Remains, 2 Harvest Time, 4 Abominable Avalanche, 4 Chronicle of Extinction, 4 Root Fossil, 3 Obelisk, 4 Cryptolabe. With the 23 lands, Fissures, Cityscapes, 5 Forest, 3 Swamp, 3 Mountain, 4 Vishanki District. I should have played, no, wait, no, I'm on a deck that couldn't play a district. Never mind. I was like, I should have played a district. Sultai doesn't have a district. Sideboard of 1 Club Promoter, 1 Hungry Blob, 1 Out with the Old, 2 Terminal Impact, 4 Dissect Intel, 3 Final Fate, 1 Chronicle of Armageddon, and 2 Soul Guide Lantern, as well as Rio Mancuna again. What? Okay. Foundation Headquarters, Data Channels, Hollow District, Hollow Arts District, Den of the First Dream, just to like get the I win button of Chronicle of Extinction, I guess. Hollow Arts District as well is surprising here. Source Chamber makes sense, especially with a more complex sideboard like Philippe is known to bring. Satessa is very good. Ukshu Wild's very good. Queen Selena's Private Collection, I honestly think is a little overrated, but the Chaos mode is really spicy. And then Remembrance Tower. Cool. Cool Beans on Chipmunk Tempo is the same thing as Epid. It is just a 1-1, it looks like. Yeah, it looks like this is yep, Boar Adept. This is a 1-1 of the deck in 5-0 and deck lists. All right. So real quick, I'm just gonna search up Savvy Smith. Only 4? I felt like there were more than 4, right? Hold on. Is it because not every Covetous Frostworm deck is on? Yeah, it's because there's 2, 3. Oh, it's because Tomas is specifically on. Yeah, because there's 4 Savvy Smith Covetous Frostworm decks, but then Tomas is also on 2 Frostworms in the sideboard. So a quarter of our field is on Covetous Frostworm Savvy Smith decks. Kind of scary. And then another eighth of our field is on the oh my god, I can form words. Another eighth of our field is on mono black aggro. Very little in the way of control. So actually I think like nothing really in the way of hard control. Which I think makes sense. You know, the idea of hard control is you try and like limit your opponent's available resources, and the planar deck means that there's always going to be some available resource for your opponent to do, even if they're out of resources in hand and they're not really drawing very well. They can still just spin the planar deck to try and find something to save them, and that's something that you really don't want them to be able to do as a control deck. You really don't want your opponent to be able to pressure them. You really don't want your opponent to have anything going on if they're out of cards in hand. But yeah, there's a lot of interesting diversity of planes in this tournament. There are some planes I really did not expect to see, like Beauclair Manor. Multiple people bringing Rio Mancuna was really, really shocking to me. Multiple people bringing Silver, I know, is on it. The Hollow Arts District is really surprising. So people really just bringing some like spice here in this field to consider. Very interested in seeing how this tournament shakes out, and getting to get into my matches. Very nervous about my round one matchup here. And I know sometimes in the past for these streams, I've tried to do like round one predictions of what I think each of these matchups is going to do. But I think the complexity of the planar deck makes it so much harder to accurately predict how a matchup is going to go. So I'm just not even going to waste my time with making those predictions. Like, it's hard to play test for these matches. In part because like I can't fire up the planar deck with my planes and my opponent's planes in advance of our match. So that is something that I just have to be like keenly aware of. So yeah, cheers. We have gotten through the 16 decks in Grand Prix Halls of Valor. Busy month here. We've got two 16-player tournaments running. Obviously, as I mentioned in my highlight coverage of the decks in Worlds that went up a few hours ago, I'm not going to be covering much of the Worlds run in terms of the actual matches. So please direct all of your love and attention to Provocative and to Caillou and to Ricky as they upload matches from their runs. And I look forward to covering the finals of that tournament and covering my run of this tournament, as well as the finals, whether I get there or not. And please wish me luck, as I have an inevitable 2 set reviews to do this month. And if GQ Chaos Reigns has taught me anything, I'm making multiple feature-length films in terms of breaking down all of the viable cards. So I've got my work cut out for me, especially because it's going to complicate things, because I can't just talk about how good those cards are in the sets that are coming in with the stuff currently in the field. I have to talk about how good these cards are from the incoming sets with each other. Oh my god, my work's going to be so hard. Things to look forward to, though. So yeah, as always, if you are unfamiliar to the format and you tuned in just to go, what the hell is this? What the hell's Revolution? As always, links are in the description. I've finally remembered to put the important links in the description for the stream. So all of the important links are down there. And if you're tuning in, if you're watching this like after this has been up and live, obviously, again, if you want to check out what's going on, the bracket is in the description. Link to the Discord's in the description. All the important stuff's down there. And yeah, if you are already part of the community, good luck to everybody who tuned into the stream and is competing in this tournament. Hope everybody who is not is excited to watch along with some of these matches. And I look forward to talking about this really wacky format in the Revolution chat. Take care, y'all.